All right, welcome to lesson 2.4, variables and equations. All right, in this chapter, we're going to learn how to solve equations using variables. Just to review, if you remember, a variable is something, it's like the letter in an equation. For example, X or A or C, something like that, okay? So some additional vocab words we have for this particular section are equation, solution, and solving the equation. All right, so equation. An equation is a mathematical sentence formed by placing an equal sign between two expressions. For example, it could be like x plus 3 equals 7. Okay? Because it has this equal sign and there are two expressions on either side of the equal sign, it's considered an equation. All right? A solution. A solution when we're discussing an equation is a number that produces a true statement when it is substituted for the variable, or the letter in this case. So we would, if we use this example that I came up with before, we would think about the solution as what number plus 3 equals 7. All right? Okay, now when you are solving the equation, the last vocab word we have is when you find all the solutions of an equation. So for example, in this example we had up here, x plus 3 equals 7. There's really only one number that could be a solution of this equation, because what plus 3 equals 7? 4. So in this case, the solution would be x equals 4. Okay? All right, so let's look at some verbal sentences and writing them as equations. What I mean by verbal sentences is I mean things that are just written out in words, okay? So the first example we have is the sum of x and 6 is 9. So there are some really important words and some keywords that we can use to help figure this out. Okay, the first one is sum. What do we know the sum is? The sum is the answer to an addition problem. So we know we're going to be talking about addition. Okay, is. Anytime you see is in a verbal sentence or in a word problem, is always means equal. Okay, so in this case, when we say the sum of x and 6, so we have x and we have 6, we know the sum of that is when they are added. Okay, and it is 9, so it equals 9. So when I'm talking about turning a verbal sentence into an equation, all I'm doing is turning the words into this. So this would be considered your answer. X plus 6 equals 9. All right, let's look at one more of those. So I have the quotient of n and 2 is 9. All right, so I have that is again. So I know I'm going to have equal. So I'm going to have equal 9. Okay, because it says is 9. I have n and I have 2. And I'm talking about the quotient. If you remember from our vocab, the quotient is the answer to a division problem. So I'm going to say the quotient of n and 2. So I'm going to say n divided by 2 equals 9. All right, now you can write this equation at like this, or another common way is if you put n over 2, and you see this a lot in algebra, n over 2 equals 9. These mean the same thing, okay? All right, the last thing we're going to do is solve equations using mental math, okay? So when they talk about using mental math, all they mean is just do it in your head, okay? So these are easy enough equations that you should be able to figure out what they mean in your head. So for example, the first one, we have x plus 3 equals 11. Okay, so what we're going to be asking ourselves is, what number plus 3 equals 11? Okay, I'm going to say, okay, well, 11 minus 3 is about, okay, it's 8, right? So 8, oh, that's kind of messed up, 8. Oh, 8 plus 3 equals 11. Okay, so your answer would just be this. Okay, then we're going to look at this one. We have 16 minus m equals 9. Okay, so we're going to think, what number subtracted from 16 is going to be 9? Well, m is going to equal 16 minus 7. Now, if I wanted to check my work, I would just plug 7 in for here, make sure that 16 minus 7 is in fact 9, and we would find out that yes, it is true. Okay, this one. Now, if you notice, my variable is now on the right side. Don't freak out about that. It still means the same thing, okay, whether the variable is on the left or on the right, okay? So we're going to say 20 equals 5 times what number? Because anytime you see a coefficient and a variable next to each other in a term like this, it just means multiplication. So 5 times what number equals 20? Well, t is going to equal 4. Okay. The last one, and I had to type it out like this. You might see it in your book again like this. Okay, so don't get confused if you see it like this. It still means, what number divided by 6 equals negative 3? Okay, well, I know right away that my number is going to have to be a negative number since my answer is negative and I'm dealing with only another positive number. So I'm just going to put that there. So what divided by 6 equals negative 3? 18. So y equals negative 18. Okay, so these are how to use mental math when you're dealing with this, with equations. Okay. All right, so that's all I have for you today on variables and equations. Please make sure you make a note of the vocabulary and all the different steps that we need to remember. Thank you.